with an exclusive guest list from imprisoned Tender Don Vusi Musi Kat Matlala to a Gauteng ANC who's who, including Pule Mabe. The emergence of a video revealing all of these people in one room for an opulent 50th birthday party for corruption-accused Tenderpreneur Edwin Sodi stands as ultimate proof of the ANC's brazen party patronage network. That's argued by investigations editor Pieter du Toit in this edition of News 24's The Lead.
It was a high-end Tenderpreneur ANC extraction network get together in Bryanston. Edwin Sodi has been scoring off government contracts for years. In a period of 9 or 10 years, his company Blackhead Consulting received more than R1 billion only from the Gauteng provincial government. So all of that money, all of those resources, all of that largesse, some of that was poured into this party.
If you'd like to engage us on anything you hear in today's edition, please send us your voice notes to the official Lead WhatsApp line. That number 072 562 3179. Well, my name's Graham Robenheimer. Can you believe it? It's almost weekend. Let's chat all this and more right here on The Lead on News 24. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, quote unquote. Now, if you haven't read Animal Farm, that's one of author George Orwell's most famous quotes. And it's never rang more true in the South African context than today, the 31st of July, 2025. As we wait for the Matlanga inquiry's first public hearings into alleged SAPS criminal capture, the man at the centre of KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner and Nhlanhla Mkhonazi's allegations, Vusi Musi, the Kat Matlala, you cannot stay out of the headlines, can you? Well, this time it's for rubbing shoulders with some questionable figures and senior ANC members at an ultra-elite 50th birthday party for fellow controversial Tender Don Edwin Sodi. You can watch a video of this particular party held at Sodi's Bryanston mansion in 2023 on YouTube's on our News 24 YouTube page right now. There, our investigations editor Pieter du Toit argues that once and for all, you'll see the greatest example of a corrupt ANC patronage network. Well, he's live on the line. He's joining me in studio, if you will, is Pieter du Toit, our investigations editor. Pieter, how are you doing? And welcome back to The Lead.
Graham, thank you very much. Sitting in our offices in Johannesburg, not far away from the Edwin Sodi mansion in Bryanston, where this lavish party was held, Graham.
Yeah, I'm just quite astonished at how many parking spaces are in the garage. I think it's like 14 or something like that. That's already blowing my mind. But who was at this party in 2023, Pieter? It's quite the list.
It is quite the list, Graham. It includes direct links to the highest office in the land. They were representatives of the majority party. Remember, the ANC is not the governing party anymore. It's merely the majority party. But senior leaders of the ANC at national and provincial level attended. And then you had these two Tender Dons, Edwin Sodi and Vusi Musi Kat Matlala, who held court, who seemed to have been at the center of the party. And what astonishes me about this fantastic investigation by Kyle Cowan and Jeff Wicks was the graphic image that we were able to source, Graham. And it shows the brusqueness, the brazen way in which these networks operate. And it absolutely is a perfect illustration of the intersection between political power, party leadership, and Tenderpreneurs. So Edwin Sodi, it was his 50th birthday party. Obviously, we've mentioned Kat Matlala. He was one of the guests, polished, well manicured, pedicured, manicured. His beard trimmed to the nines. But also we saw that Keith Khoza was there. Keith Khoza is, of course, Deputy President Paul Mashatile's most trusted counselor and advisor. He works at the union buildings. Mashatile, according to Sodi, who confirmed this to us, was invited but could, unfortunately, Sodi said, not attend.
Sure. Okay.
Other attendees included Lebogang Mahile, who is a senior leader in Gauteng, also MEC for economic development in the province, a portfolio, incidentally, Graham, that was previously held by one Paul Mashatile. Another attendee was TK Nkiza. He is the convener of the Gauteng ANC's leadership. Of course, the Gauteng's ANC leadership was disbanded earlier after its poor performance in last year's election. So you really had a galaxy of influential leaders in Gauteng with a direct line to the presidency in the form of Keith Khoza. We know, Graham, that there were other political leaders as well. We are trying to confirm those names. And when we do, we'll publish them on News 24.
Yeah, you forgot one. Pieter du Toit, a former ANC Treasurer General candidate, ANC national spokesperson, as well as ANC NEC member. So it was most certainly...
But, Graham, sorry to interject. Pule Mabe is, of course, also a corruption accused, as many in the ANC are. Edwin Sodi, of course, is also a corruption accused. He is standing trial in the High Court in the Free State in Bloemfontein, alongside Ace Magashule, a former ANC Secretary General. So really, not only this gathering, this party, this social event, but these pictures, Graham, tell the story of how the ANC's extraction networks operate. But sorry, I interrupted. But yes, Pule Mabe, a senior ANC member, former spokesperson, he also enjoyed his night of excess and fine wine, prawns, and Basotho lamb.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, what did everybody eat? And I even saw a very expensive whiskey brand was basically in abundance, on tap, if you will, at the Swanky Affair. I mean, this is like a really top-notch party. If you get an invite to this, then you're sorted.
Totally, Graham. It was a high-end Tenderpreneur ANC extraction network get together in Bryanston. Edwin Sodi has been scoring off government contracts for years. In a period of 9 or 10 years, his company Blackhead Consulting received more than R1 billion only from the Gauteng provincial government. So all of that money, all of those resources, all of that largesse, some of that was poured into this party. And I referred to the menu, but we report on News 24 today that on the menu was Basotho lamb, complemented by expensive seafood like prawns. Expensive drinks. Everyone was dressed to the nines as well. You can, on the photograph, you can see both Sodi and Matlala, the tender kings, the Don of Bryanston, the Don of Tembisa. You could see them in their tuxedos, well manicured, well pedicured, and enjoying a night with their friends. Probably, from what we see and from given from what we know from history, carving up more state resources while they were at it, Graham. Not only the Basotho lamb that came under the knife, but I suppose, and quite possibly and quite probably, some government tenders as well.
And Sodi's Blackhead Consulting, as I understand it, Pieter, in terms of the so-called Free State asbestos scam tender trial, there, his company was essentially pivotal in the subcontracting and where all the money sort of went left, right, and center. And that's not the only case here, though. If we're talking about the 50th birthday party man himself, there's also this particular project that might have flown under the radar for a short while, but the Rooiwal wastewater treatment works project, that was around 2019. Blackhead Consulting was also involved there.
Look, Sodi is a colourful figure in Johannesburg. Obviously, very well connected, given the way in which he has sourced government contracts over the years. But yes, he is involved in the controversial wastewater treatment plant outside of Pretoria too. So he has his finger in many tender pies, many government pies. But again, let me emphasize, he's a corruption accused. Deputy President Paul Mashatile has been known to visit his house on the Atlantic seaboard, which has now been attached by the state. The deputy president has defended his friendship with Mashatile, saying he's a friend and that he's not afraid or fearful of confirming their friendship. And now his closest aide, Keith Khoza, also attends this birthday party. There doesn't seem to be any shame Graham, amongst the political elite, to mingle with people like Sodi, to mingle with people like Matlala. Matlala is now a corruption accused as well. Matlala has been arrested, and he is implicated in a string of murders too. So these are the types of characters that ANC leaders consort with, that they call their brothers. I think it was TK Nkiza that we quote in the story that calls Matlala Sodi his brother. Matlala his brother. These people seem to have no regard for the public purse, Graham. This is the message that it communicates. If you look at that photograph, you can see the convergence of political and party power with private interests and tenderpreneur interests. And I think that's what's so upsetting about this. And I think that's what graphically illustrates this. You know, Graham, we write about these figures. We write about the majority party. We write about these networks of extraction. But a picture really paints 1,000 words, doesn't it? I mean, seeing them sitting around a table, enjoying each other's company, laughing at us, whilst they're enjoying the best of natural produce that the country can offer them, probably and possibly bought with the proceeds of quite probably corrupt tenders. I mean, it 100%. Really is outrageous.
Yeah,
what
one of them.
ANC do about this?
100%. Yeah.
Do anything about it.
Yeah, one of the tenders, as you allude to, and if we just hone in on the cat for a second, of course, it's the now cancelled 360 million rand SAPS Health Services tender, which has been sort of a main part of the Police Commissioner Mkonazi's allegations. Yeah. That's since been cancelled, and of course, the cat's behind bars for the failed attempted hit on his former lover Tobogo Tobojane, and of course, that's now sort of exposed this sort of like, gang of guns for hire in Gauteng that have been going on, after innocent people in all sorts of situations. We've seen several arrests there. So yes, these are very senior ANC people, enjoying a lavish dinner with people who are now languishing in the Kgosi Mampuru, the second, correctional services facility in Pretoria. It's what does it all say to you about our current situation in South Africa, where we're living in one of the most unequal societies in the world? Yes. And some people might say, we saw this, during apartheid as well. And of course, the National Party then was, of course, very much involved in grand scale corruption. Many names come to mind. Louis Late, Dr. Nico Diedrichs, a lot of that, the information scandal, of course. But what does it say to you now in 2025?
Look, Graham, I do think, that is irrelevant. I think we live in 2025, 31 years after 1994, and we're sitting with a corrupt and hubristic elite whose only mission is to extract as much resources from the state as they can, who have established an ecosystem and a system of a network of patronage and of extraction that is almost second to none that I know of. The way in which these networks operate, almost all of them intrinsically linked to the majority party at all levels of government, at all levels of the party, whether it's at local level in municipalities, provincial level in Gauteng, for example, or at national level related to parastatals. And it tells a story of a political elite that really is stopping at nothing to extract as many and as much resources as they can while they can still do it. And you've got this ecosystem that consists of the state, who is the biggest procurer of goods and services in the country, which means it's got the biggest budget to spend on stuff in the country. The second part of this triangle is, of course, the party, the majority party, who deploys their leaders and bureaucrats into senior positions. And the third leg of this golden triangle, as I call it, is, of course, these tenderpreneurs. And within this ecosystem, you see a continued and an absolute relentless extraction of resources, Graham. Literally a day, there isn't a day that goes by without either News 24 or some of our colleagues in the broader media reporting about a form of corruption at almost every level of government. So what does it tell us? It tells us that we are being led by a predatory elite, if I can quote Zwelinzima Vavi from 2010 when he warned about the rise of the Zuma ANC. This is where we are now, and this is what what we're faced with. The big problem, of course, is that we've got a misfiring criminal justice system. And you mentioned the allegations by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi made a couple of weeks ago, where he spoke openly and directly about these syndicates and the reach that they've got into the highest levels of government. Now look at that photograph. Look at the people around that table at the Saudi 50th, and tell me that Mkhwanazi is wrong. Now that's what this photograph, the environment that we operate in, tells us that we are living and working in a deeply corrupt environment, and an environment that is being enabled by the ANC, assisted by the ANC, and populated by the ANC and their leaders. So the scale of resource extraction, Graham, is quite astronomical. And until we see the criminal justice functioning properly, we will probably see this continue.
You're listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graham Rowenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072-562-3179.
And I thought, quite interestingly, and I've managed to have a sneak peek, if you will, at an opinion piece that you're publishing on News 24 in response to our investigations team's reporting on this lavish party. And in it, Pieter, you sort of point to something that's been on my mind for a really long time, is that, albeit the Zondo Commission had made these very strong recommendations and had looked at grand scale sort of state capture corruption, we often forget that, corruption still continues in the form that we've always known it within the South African context in our local government arenas, metros, municipalities, et al. And it's not as if their budgets are any smaller. We're still talking about a large amount of money in terms of what they get and where projects are being used to siphon a lot of this cash out, right?
Graham, absolutely. The Zondo Commission into state capture, the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, really laid bare the extent of state capture in a particular period in our post-1994 history, but it was also focused on a very narrow band of areas of extraction, parastatals, the government, and so on. But what we see and what we've been reporting on at News 24, certainly over the last 2.5 years, I suppose, is the extent and the breadth of rampant corruption at the levels below national government, which means in provincial governments, where in Gauteng, for example, we have a plethora of agencies and government institutions which don't seem to do a hell of a lot apart from gobble up a large part of the provincial budgets. But we don't see these agencies deliver a lot, or we aren't exactly sure what their functions are, but they seem to be the honeypots for many of these networks of extraction.
IDT,
where you see money being signed
Independent Development Trust, sorry to cut you short, Pieter, with this huge oxygen tender. We don't know a hell of a lot about the IDT, let's be honest, even as journalists.
Well, how about the Gauteng Provincial, the Gauteng Partnership Fund, which granted loans of almost 40 million to Paul Mashatile's son-in-law? What happened with that money? What happened to the loans that were disbursed to Mashatile's son-in-law? So you've got all these agencies and institutions that we don't know what they do, but they are the honeypots. Now, at a level below that, at metropolitan municipalities, the picture gets even more dire, because oversight is even less at the local government level. On Monday, we will be publishing a story about the murder of an auditor, an internal auditor at the Ekurhuleni Metropolitan Municipality, and we will be revealing what exactly this auditor was working on, which cost him his life. I don't need to tell you what happened to Babita Diokaran, who was a mid-level financial manager at the Gauteng Provincial Department of Health, and what happened to her when she started red flagging companies who were getting dodgy tenders. So this is happening everywhere. It is happening unabated, and because of the lack of oversight, because of the lack of criminal prosecutions in those areas, these people are getting away with it, and we're seeing the mass extraction of resources from the state environment. Graham, it's a crisis, and I think it's a crisis that that's converging all at once, and we're seeing the collapse, I think, of many systems that have been able to support and hold up democracy until very recently. But what's happening now is all of these systems are collapsing at once. And the press conference by Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi a couple of weeks ago was a symptom of the criminal justice's failure to clamp down on corruption, and the failure of the criminal justice system and its leadership to properly implement anti-corruption, anti-crime strategies. And we are now really harvesting the bitter fruit of electing political leadership, I think, that have shown a singular inability and unwillingness to tackle these problems.
100%. I would say, yeah, Mkhwanazi's press are definitely a watershed moment in more contemporary times. What's your take and your confidence in the establishment of this Madlanga inquiry? Of course, a lot of the discussion,
Yes.
Pieter, has been about, hey, it's another commission, it's another nearly 148 million rand that's already been put aside just for 6 months. We know that it's probably not going to be just 6 months. It's probably might be a year, maybe 2 years. Who knows? Because there just might be so much that comes out of the woodwork, right? Here we have this court case to try and stop the Madlanga inquiry at the same time, arguing, from the Umkhonto weSizwe party that it's not necessary. What else in the absence? And I agree with my colleague, our colleague Karen Morn, a specialist legal journalist. What else in the absence of a commission are we to do here?
Look, Graham, I wish Justice Madlanga and evidence leader Advocate Terry Mutau well in their endeavors. I personally think that the remit of the commission is much too broad. It includes metropolitan police. It includes the police itself. The police, one division of the police, crime intelligence, for example, would warrant a whole commission of inquiry in itself. What's happening in the city of Johannesburg is a commission of inquiry in itself. So I wish him well. I am skeptical simply because, I covered, and all of us covered, the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, and before that, the Zuma and Gupta years. We covered it closely as journalists, and I remember sitting at the Commission of Inquiry in front of Justice Raymond Zondo, thinking that this might be a turning point in our country's history, and I hoped it would be, but the implementation of its recommendations following the conclusion of the Commission of Inquiry has left much to be desired. But even budgeting for government's inability to implement recommendations, the biggest problem that we have, Graham, as I see it, is a dysfunctional criminal justice system, is a South African police service that is utterly and wholly unable to respond to the crime situation in this country, that is saddled with very poor leadership, that has been beset by political interference for the last 20 years. We have been accursed with poor leadership in the police, dating right back to Jackie Salibi, the former
100%.
police commissioner, who was in cahoots with Glenn Agliati, who was a mafia boss. Political appointees at the police have never worked, and it won't work. But we are simply, or this government is simply refusing to tackle the core of the problem, the root of the problem at the police. Now, this cascades over into the Hawks, which is supposed to be the police's specialist investigative unit. It is sitting with a vacancy rate hovering at around 50%, and it's been doing that for more than 10 years. Now, the National Prosecuting Authority, who is supposed to put away criminals, is dependent on investigations being done by the police and the Hawks. Now, they cannot do it because often when they get dockets from the Hawks or the police, these dockets are incomplete. The investigations were done haphazardly. And when it gets presented to the court, judges or magistrates often throw them out. So prosecutors are being sent to court often with both arms tied behind their back. So the problem, Graham, is a criminal justice system that's not working. Yes, we can have a commission of inquiry to give us some insight, but it's not going to get fixed until the police, the Hawks, and the NPA aren't fixed. Luckily, we've got IDAC, that independent directorate against corruption led by Advocate Andrea Johnson, that seems to be doing and is trying to do a hell of a lot of work, but they're fighting against a very strong tide. And unless there isn't a strong, principled, and urgent decision taken, a political decision taken to fix the criminal justice system from top to bottom, we can have all the commissions in the world, but we won't fix the problem with corruption and crime in this country.
Right, and you've even got former Chief Justice, right, Raymond Zondo, speaking at a recent church event in Johannesburg, South African Council of Churches, saying, he doesn't have a whole lot of confidence in the current Hawks. They haven't really done much with his recommendations, and he said, hey, I've got more confidence in the early 2000s era Scorpions, obviously before they got disbanded later, around 2007 by the ANC. And then in the meantime, we lack general sort of SAPS visibility, Bobby's on the beat, if you will, on the ground, and accountability remains a huge concern, that if you do something wrong, there's not necessarily consequences in that regard. If you have a lot of money, you can bail yourself out, is still that sort of general sort of feeling, right? And then, going back to and finishing off here, Pieter, with our main concern and the ruling elite having these lavish parties, and in sharp contrast to staggering youth unemployment levels. It just continues to get worse and worse. We should all be very equally concerned about that and the lack of jobs in South Africa today, and how long it takes us within a coalition government to even get a budget passed more than 5 months. It's crazy to think that that's the current situation we're in, although healthy if you look at the silver linings. Finally, after all of this and all of our discussions today, and I appreciate your analysis and insights, what does this really say about that sliding scale of victory for the African National Congress as we look to local government elections next year? I don't think it's too out of the ordinary to see potentially Helen Zille, for example, running as a potential DA mayoral candidate in Johannesburg.
Look, Graham, this is not good for the ANC. This cannot be good for the ANC. It's very clear that their leaders, senior leaders, are maintain and enjoy a close relationship with people who are being accused of corruption, and they defend those relationships. And then when you look at the photographs that we published, the video that we published, the story that Kyle and Jeff wrote, it's as if these people are laughing at us in our faces. They simply have no regard for good governance. They simply have no regard for transparency. They have no regard for the prudent use of state resources. In fact, they go out of their way, it seems, to consume as much as they can, to accumulate as much as they can on the back of the taxpayer, on the back of people who are struggling with basic services. Where I live in Johannesburg, the city is literally falling apart. Infrastructure is crumbling. Financial management is out of the door. But our political elite, they keep on chowing, they keep on eating, and they keep on enjoying the good life until for the foreseeable future, until when voters decide that they've had enough of this corrupted elite that we are saddled with. That day, most certainly is coming. And if you look at the trajectory of the ANC, certainly since 2016, when they first lost Johannesburg, I do not see that trajectory changing anytime soon, especially and particularly on the back of behavior such as this.
All right. Your latest piece, penned by our investigations editor, Pieter du Toit, reads Sodi Matlala, How the ANC's Vulgar Ecosystem of Extraction Flourishes. It's an opinion piece. It's a must read as we head into the weekend, hoping for better times, on the front page of News 24. Pieter, bye donkey. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, I always appreciate your insights here on The Lead.
Dankie Graham, dit was lekker.
This is Bruce Whitfield's Business Week. It's powered by Capitec, the business bank for everyone. Business without the boring bits. It's a weekly wrap of only the most important business stories from the world of money and finance on News 24. Each week, we will share just what you need to know in order to help you understand and better navigate a deeply complex, a very confusing, and massively uncertain world. We've got money, we've got markets, we've got millionaires, we've got megalomaniacs, and everything in between. Bruce Whitfield's Business Week, the podcast that respects your time and your intelligence. Helena Wasserman is the business editor at News 24 to help us identify the one thing in the news this week that matters most and will still matter 12 months from now. Just a passing comment, if you would, Helena. We'll pick up with Zwelaki in a moment, our market commentator. But yeah, the market has very quickly dismissed the negative news flow from around the world as the JSE is at 100,000 yesterday, well, on Wednesday, and 100,000 again on Thursday. It feels like we're finding a new level.
And the rand's at 1750, almost the best level in a month. I think this week, for South Africans at least, turned out to be much more kumbaya than we thought, with the budget being passed in a very painless manner. GNU still intact. It's basically all Ubuntu all the time, baby.
Well, for now. Remember, we do want to hear from you. Send us a short voice note, about 20 seconds. Tell us who you are, ask us your question, make your comment on our dedicated Business Week hotline. The WhatsApp number 072 562 3179.
Listen Up is News 24's sharp new podcast, where hosts Tim Cohen and Mark Barnes cut through the clutter with bold takes and unfiltered insight.
They're not fighting for the good of South Africa. And so this has degenerated into a series of tit-for-tat spats. How's that for a bit of poetry early in the morning?
Smart, punchy, and unapologetically real.
President Ramaphosa has explained why he did it, and the reason he did it was because he said that people weren't allowed to go to America, and then Andrew Whitfield did, and then there's a dispute about whether or not he asked.
Catch new episodes of Listen Up every Tuesday on News 24 or wherever you get your podcasts.
I know a lot about this. Not really.
Yeah,
but
there we go.
Here goes.
You can be the accused for a change. Yeah.
Buying a car? Let driving with J9 steer you right.
The reason why I wanted you in today is because I want to talk about car sales. You were in that space for a few years as a salesman.
News 24's motoring podcast, hosted by Janine van der Post, delivers sharp car advice, expert test drives.
Nowadays, when somebody, for the most part, when somebody walks into a dealership, they know sometimes more about the car than the salesperson does because of the access to information.
Yeah. The latest trends and motorsport interviews, all in one smooth ride.
But I mean, these are basic questions that people really need to know. And I think at the end of the day, you just really need to do your homework.
Catch Driving with J9 on News 24 or wherever you get your podcasts.
To end off, did you know that on this day in history, on the 31st of July 1879, cheapest, that's a long time ago, the very first cable connection between South Africa and Europe via Aden was officially launched. It was laid by the British electrical engineer Charles Tilston Bright, what a name, as part of his project to link the British Empire with growing telecommunications technologies. Sure, a lifetime ago, but that was on this day in history, thanks to the South African History Online Archive. Thank you so much for an epic week, Jeepers. We discussed some many heavy topics, and I know that it's only going to heat up as we move on towards the local government elections next year. I'm particularly looking forward to it as from a journalist's perspective. It always offers a unique opportunity to see South Africa in its fullest, and to go to places where you don't normally go as a reporter and uncover stories about service delivery woes, things that affect people on the ground. That's sort of what I'm looking forward to at the moment. In the meantime, if you'd like to engage us on this episode's topic, send us your thoughts and opinions to the official Lead WhatsApp line, that number 072 562 3179. Look out for Bruce Woodfield's Business Week, the latest offering of which episode 3 should be out already by this time that you're listening to the Lead. Go and check that out. There's some fantastic interviews there. A chat with the South African Brewery CEO, a check-in with the Old Mutual's Chief Investment Officer, Sponiso Nxumalo, And Carol Paytons is standing in from the News 24 business team in Helena Wasserman's stead in today's show. So they're touching on all sorts of things. Trade, Transnet, and food price disinflation are some of the many topics that will be discussed on Bruce Whitfield's Business Week, of which is picking up in audience numbers. Thank you so much for tuning into that. Of course, many other podcasts to look out for. Driving with J9, there's a fresh edition dropping Friday. And of course, every Tuesday, like clockwork, listen out for Listen Up with Tim Cohen and Mark Barnes. Thank you so much for listening to The Lead with Graham Robenheimer and myself. This entire week, we've had some fantastic guests on. Love working with the News 24 team, and there's so many beautiful profiles here and fantastically knowledgeable people to have conversations with. Until then, my name's Graham Robenheimer, and so long as there's news, we'll have The Lead.